the NFL PE sports business podcast, the Sporticast.
Mark, I tell the audience all the time that Edmonds, for a Princeton guy, not all that bright. Because of a technical glitch, we had to try a second time at the start. We told him his intro sucked the first time, and he came back with the same intro, OMG, which is the Mets, NFLP. I didn't think it was all that good. Guests usually try to suck up to the co-hosts, so they try to play the middle. I know you will not do that.
Be honest here, Mark.
Yeah,
be honest.
You can be the Russian judge in the figure skating competition at the moment. Give me the technical merit score for Eben Novy-Williams.
Milos gets a 3.6 as a technical score.
Out of 4, correct?
Degree of difficulty was low. I mean, Eben, do you want to try again?
No. I had an opportunity to try again, Scott, and I went with the same one.
All right. Well, let me set the stage. Mark Gannis, founder of Sports Corp, advisor extraordinaire in the sports biz world. Mark, I'm going to give you a very simple question that a lot of people in the industry have been asking me. So these are not folks who do not understand what's what. These are industry folks who saw CNBC blow this up yesterday. Obviously, it was in the story of the week. It's been everywhere. Why is this the big deal? The other leagues have this. Why was this such a big deal?
It's because it's the NFL.
I've heard of the NFL, yes.
Anything the NFL does is a big deal. And that's a double-edged sword. I mean, there are times where the NFL does something or even doesn't do anything, and it becomes big national news. In this case, this was a really interesting confluence of the finance industry at its highest levels coming together with the sports industry at its highest levels at a time when the sports industry generally is blowing up in terms of capital and interest and attention. So it's a confluence of all of these factors, and that the NFL was, didn't jump first, but jumped last into the pool. So there was a lot of pent-up interest, pent-up demand. And as I said, anything the NFL does gets a lot of attention.
Eben knows. Hold on, Eben. Hold on. I like to triangulate. I'm triangulating early in this episode. We're going to triangulate stuff. You said the pool, so we're talking about a body of water. I will tell you, interestingly enough, the first time I had heard the word confluence, it was having to do with Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh and the Steelers. And it's the Monongahela, the Allegheny, and the Ohio. But it was the first time I'd ever heard the word confluence was those rivers in Pittsburgh. So it all really goes back to the NFL, even our English language. Somehow, some way, it all goes back to the NFL. Take it away, Milos. Eben.
Mark, your name came up on the show earlier this week, actually, because we were talking about what's one of the many things that set the NFL apart from other leagues. And last time you were on the show, you talked for a bit about the way the NFL has historically defined owner as being a different thing than the way that any other major U.S. or foreign league defines owner. I would love for you if you could give the cliff notes of that one more time for our listeners, and then tell us if this change, the private equity policy that was voted on today, if you think this does anything to change what sets the NFL apart from all these other leagues around what it means to be an owner.
Sure. In the NFL, it's requirement that a single human being, literally one human being, have total control over all activities and all decisions related to the team. It's in the Constitution and bylaws. It is a defined term. It's a control owner is the defined term. So even if you have a family with lots and lots of people who own interests in a team, it still has to be a single person, and that control can't be taken away. You die, it can be taken away if you sell the team, of course, but no, the other limiteds or the other partners in the team can't take it away. The NFL has been served very, very well by not broadening out its ownership interests into public corporations, like many other leagues had done over time, into all sorts of different structures where you might have a person who spoke for the team and made the decisions, but owned maybe 10-15% of the team. And as a result of that and the teams staying in families for generations, the NFL tends to make the better decisions because it looks long-term, not short-term. it is always thinking generationally, not just how it affects this quarter or this year, but how does it affect the business, the industry, and my family going forward from one generation to the next. It's when the other leagues started taking a lot of other interest. Because remember, the NFL was not the number one league. It wasn't even the number two league in the United States in the 70s, and wasn't this global juggernaut either. But it's that decision-making process, which is a total reflection of the ownership rules, that has been what has allowed the NFL to really separate itself and take a different trajectory when you make those decisions on a long-term basis. And one of the examples we had talked about before is people saw this YouTube deal that came in after DirecTV, and they said, oh well, the NFL negotiated the deal in the last year. They talked to YouTube 8 or 9 years before that deal. They're always planning long-term. In the broadcast deals that they did, 10-year broadcast deals, but they each have a 7-year out, because they're always thinking long-term. And that comes from the ownership rules, where it's very generational and very few teams trade. And that's an important factor. I'm going to take the Snyder deal with Washington on the side for a moment, because that was a unique, rare, hopefully unique event.
That's the sale to Josh Harris.
To Josh Harris, and the reason why it was sold. That's the primary point. The average in the NFL is one team changes hands every 3.5 years. That's glacial. It just doesn't happen.
That's like 8 months in the NBA, right?
Well, you get the idea.
Yeah.
So well, that also drives the valuations when we're talking about. We're talking the emotional versus sort of your on-paper valuations. What is the first thing people say? The scarcity value of franchises in general, but then you're putting the NFL on top. That is at the top of the pyramid. They just don't trade that often.
And people, have talked about over the years, oh, well, the NFL can expand and get all that. Guys, the NFL is at 32 teams. The NFL is staying at 32 teams. First, it ends up being the perfect number for the types of competitions and divisions and that kind of thing. But beyond that, they're not split. They don't need to, and they're not dividing the national revenues any further than that. And that scarcity is going to continue as a result. So now we get to the second part of the question, Evan, which is, will this change it? I will tell you that in my discussions with the Special Committee on Ownership Policy, SCOOP, as it is affectionately called.
I love that there's an acronym. It's perfect. Yep.
That was goal one. That was job one. Do not change the decision-making process. Do not change the considerations of what has worked so well by having a single individual, and in almost every case, a family with generational control, operating and controlling and making the decisions for teams in the NFL. There was actually nothing more important, not how much money was coming in, not the names of the firms that were interested, not what the valuations might be. There was nothing more important than retaining that kind of decision-making process.
I'm not sure we have a headline here or a Harvard case study with the notion that having skin in the game is a good thing for business decision-making outcomes, right? Yeah. It's a wonder to me that it doesn't always be the leading principle. Like, if I'm in a business deal with somebody, I want to know you have skin in the game.
Yep.
That'll lead to... And, Mark, you talk about the league having forethought. Eben and I know we sat down with an owner, I will not identify who, but we're going back, Eben, 3 or 4 years, where an owner called us and said, hey, we're going to be in town and we'd like to have lunch. And the main topic, and brought the whole leadership team, by the way, and really wanted to discuss what the perceived impact on private equity infusion would be on, not to bury here, Mark, but did care about valuation. But he kind of carved it up a little bit, wanted to know what the impact would be on several pieces of the business. Just goes to say, like you talked about YouTube, they started that 8 years ago. Nothing, the NFL, one thing they do not do is knee-jerk. They do not have to. They have the luxury of time. That is a big advantage for any league looking to try new things.
Absolutely right. And that gets to the ownership rules that Evan was just asking about, and the generational and the family ownership. And they want to make sure that doesn't ever change in the NFL. And that leads to planning, research, decisions well in advance of when something needs to be decided. Think about streaming. We all talk about streaming today. You guys remember that the NFL actually did streaming on Yahoo of a couple of the London games, the early London games,
I remember that. Yeah, the
and they
Jaguars were
did
playing one of
it
those
way
games.
before anybody else
I
because they
couldn't
knew
even get my
streaming.
computer to reboot. You're asking if I watched a streaming sports event years ago. Are you insane? I still have a cable bundle, Mark. Very proud cable bundle guy right here.
You and me both have DirecTV with the bundle, so it's we're the old guys here. We're not the streamers. We have Milos to lead us into that world.
Ay, ay, ay.
So Mark, looking into your crystal ball, there's going to be more than one team that takes advantage of this. There's going to be less than 32 teams. In your guess, let's say 3 years from now, how many NFL owners do you think have deals in place to sell passive minority stakes to institutional firms?
So you're going 3 years out. 3 years
Yeah.
is a long way. You might have a quarter to a third of the teams in that 3 year period. Recognize a couple of things. One is most teams don't have a need, and that's kind of an important thing to understand. I mean, if you're building a new stadium and you need a lot of capital, you can borrow it. Maybe you can do this instead, and maybe this becomes a better approach for some people, or at least part of the mix. If you need to consolidate ownership, if you've got family related issues and you need the capital for that. But every team in the NFL, every single one has a very positive cash flow, as you guys know from your Sportico NFL valuation exercises.
Very positive.
Yes, very positive. And it's only going up. And by the way, the players, their numbers are also going up. We now have the second tier quarterbacks, not the Mahomeses, but the guys who they hope will become Mahomes, who are now making 50 to 60 million bucks a year. We've got a wide receiver who's now, $40 million a year? So everybody is benefiting from this model and this looking towards the future and making decisions properly. So there's no need for cash in most cases. And you're not selling. Very few teams sell, so you don't need the valuations to just keep going up. And then you've got the other so the balance sheets don't need to be bolstered like some of the other leagues did, where their balance sheets really were not at their valuation levels and they needed some new capital coming in. And even COVID, which forced a number of sports teams and leagues to accept private equity, especially if you look at the soccer leagues in Europe, even that was handled almost in the regular course of business by the NFL.
Well,
So
Evan and I like to discuss that. Even before the NFL sells a season, a single ticket, and then here we go to the COVID. You can play before an empty stadium. You're still profitable. These teams are
right.
still profitable just on the national money there, just on the national media money. Evan, you're going to roll your eyes, but in Mark talking about that wide receiver, it sparked a player marketing opportunity. For where we are with inflation and before interest rates start to drop, if you're CD Lamb, do you not sign a deal with one of the big banks and put your signing bonus in a CD? And absolutely I'm bathing in my 5%. Like that should be the commercial. I don't know. Pick a bank, but that's what he should
Wells
do.
Fargo.
oh my
Where are
God,
you?
CD promoting CDs.
CD promoting CDs.
That
right.
is brilliant.
Right. Would Roger let him promote CBD? I don't like. If there is no, I don't
yet,
think so. Right?
probably.
Not yet. Okay, so then let's stick with the CDs then. Let's stick in the financial way. I
the
think that's a much
discs are
better
a little
idea.
anachronistic at this point.
Yeah, well, anyway, this is where he shakes his head at me, Mark. He's like, I cannot believe he interrupted the show for that. But this is how the brain works. If I don't get it out, problems start. There's a log jam, and that's when bad things happen.
So to get back on topic, the NFL, as you mentioned, Mark, the last major U.S. league to do this, took its time, took a look at what other leagues were doing, decided on what it wanted its own policy to be. It's a bit more conservative than other leagues, I think intentionally so. 10% is the maximum a team can sell to private equity. It's 30% in most other leagues. Scott and I did some reporting about the NFL was talking about potentially having an option to buy back stakes. CNBC reported that maybe the NFL was looking for carry a cut of a sale if and when a private equity company sells its stake down the line. What can you tell us about the finer points of this policy in terms of additional ways in which the NFL was able to use its leverage to get better terms on either the front or the back end or both?
Well, on the two specifics, and then I'll add another one to it. There are provisions that if there are causes, the NFL can force the private equity firms to sell their stakes, not necessarily back to the league, but to sell their stakes. And those, no one expects that will happen with this, blue chip group of private equity firms, but you have to prepare for that in the future. You don't want to be in the middle of a political environment. I mean, imagine another Kaepernick kind of situation, and CalPERS has a lot of money in Blackstone, and they want to get at, it becomes a political issue.
We're in a world where Bear Stearns went away. You just have to be ready.
Exactly. So there is that kind of provision where the NFL can force a sale. Gotcha. And that's for that reason. You don't expect it, but it might happen. As far as a piece of the upside, that is a yes. It is in there, and it should be in there because the great value is what happens with the 32. And since really it's a minority of the teams that will ever use this, it's this is a small way to have the non-users also get a little benefit for their work that resulted in a windfall profit.
So that goes to general revenue that gets split 32 ways.
Exactly.
How big is the carry? Is it 5%?
That I don't think I should be saying.
Okay, understand.
Does that get divided 32 ways, or is it the 31 for the clubs that voted in favor of this?
I
I want to read the fine point on that one.
I do not know the answer to that. My guess would be 32, but as all revenues are split, but I don't know that. A particular point. Now, let's get to another question, another point there about leverage. So think about minority stakes as they have been sold historically. Typically, there's been a 20, 25, 30% discount to the control interest when an individual comes in and buys. Then you have some of the private equity firms for the marquee assets that they have gone and bought into. They've been paying par. There has been no discount in many cases. There's been discounts in other cases, but in some of the marquee, the premium ones, there's been no discount. Well, the NFL isn't premium. The NFL is super premium.
Super, yeah, that's platinum.
Exactly. So the argument can be made that instead of a non-controlled discount, there should actually be a premium because the NFL is a super premium investment. Because it's almost like stock prices being based on future earnings rather than prior earnings or current earnings. When you have a company like, hot company like NVIDIA, it sells based on future earnings. Well, the NFL is like NVIDIA. It's a super premium product. Apple is the same way. And so I could make the argument that on a leverage basis, it should actually be higher than par value. For what the private equity firm should pay.
Mark, Eben and I have sat next to each other for a very long time. I'm just wondering if when you made your quote there, the NFL is like NVIDIA, did he think there's my headline? Like, did it pop in your head, Eben? Because it did me.
Because today is NVIDIA earnings day.
NVIDIA's earning today, exactly.
We're recording this on Wednesday, yeah.
Hey, Mark, do you expect, PE has certain, their criteria is pretty basic for PE. There's things they like to do. Obviously, these will be non-control. So they're just saying, all right, we just want in on the club. You guys do. Do you expect the returns to sort of mirror what historically private equity has been looking for? We know this is a minimum 6-year hold. That's in tune with what private equity is. Do you expect the returns to mirror what they've had in other investments?
Yes. When you look at what the private equity firms try and pitch to their investors, they look for an 18 to 24% return. The last 10 years, I think it is, of the NFL, 12.5%. I haven't factored in, Eben, the new numbers from you guys and Kurt. And Scott has nothing to do with it, of course. But it's been historically.
That's a true statement. That's fine.
Yeah, 12.5%. And over 20 years, 11%. And they're non-correlated assets, meaning it doesn't matter what the stock market does or what the bond market does. and because you have contractual monies already blocked from television coming in over the next 9 years. You've got the player contract, which is a percentage, and you've got huge upsides from places like gambling and international and sponsorships and streaming and direct to consumer. This is one of those where you could reasonably say it should at least go that 12.5% or so that it's been in the past. It should continue. Then you add leverage into the mix, as most private equity firms do. They have some leverage to goose up the returns. So you could not only see an 18 to 24% return, or even being conservative, mid-teens, but it's with a certainty. And that's what a lot of other investments do not have. It doesn't matter if it's real estate, it doesn't matter if it's bonds, it doesn't matter if it's stocks. The certainty of the rate of the return for the NFL is so significant that it makes the asset class that much stronger.
And the affiliation, I mean, I'm thinking from the firm side now for a moment. Yeah. I want to jump to the other side. From the firm side, simply having the relationship with the NFL and the blessing of the NFL surely helps you when I'm out fundraising. Not the easiest thing in the world to do. That is the literal shield of approval here. Like that, I am affiliated with the NFL. I'm out there trying to raise money.
That's the next headline for Evan. Shield of approval.
He'll never give me any credit. Forget it. Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Still thinking about CDs over here.
That
was a good one. I like it.
Absolutely right. And look, they've been out fundraising already.
They sure have.
And there are firms that aren't in the group that are out fundraising also because they hope to be in the next group that the league will approve. There's a lot of value to it. Now, you then take prospective fund managers that will invest, whether it be from endowments or from pension funds or wherever, and you bring them to Super Bowls, you bring them to games, bring them down on the field. There's a lot of sex appeal associated with it, but the greatest thing is that it is the number one sports league in the world, and arguably the number one entertainment product in the world. You look at what was the last year, the TV ratings. 94 of the 100 top rated television shows on TV were NFL games.
Greatest graphic in the history of sports business, Lev Akabas.
I love that graphic.
Yep.
By the way, I sent that graphic to somebody we both know who's involved at a certain level with the NFL, and his note back to me was, "We still have slots to fill."
Oh God, I love it.
I
love the competitive nature.
I know.
I love it.
That's why they're so strong.
Yeah.
Damn the Oscars! How do we kill the Oscars?
Yeah. Thanksgiving needs to go away. Yeah.
By the way, Penske Media is big in the entertainment world. Let's not kill the Oscars and these other award shows, okay? Let's give us a slot or two.
But that's the mindset.
Yeah.
We still have slots to fill. That's why they've been on this meteoric rise, and why the private equity firms and the investors that will be supporting the private equity firms are so hot on getting into the league.
How does the league...
Go ahead. I was saying private equity always looks to come in and change process. I don't think there's too much fiddling going on here. We're good. We're you guys take it away. What do you think? By the way, Evan, I'll give you in a second. Are we going to open up to sovereign? What do you think about sovereign wealth, Mark? Is that a category, or do you think we kind of stay out of anything that might have some geopolitical tumult?
So sovereign wealth funds can actually invest into the funds
through the funds,
right?
Okay,
not on their own. And by the way, endowments can't on their own. Pension funds cannot on their own. Insurance companies can't on their own. So this is it. But their sovereign wealth funds are being treated the same way, not making any distinctions among them. But they are capped at 7.5%, as all prospective investors are. This is another part of the NFL's U.S. leverage before, how much strength they have. They can impose this kind of restriction on what money can be brought into the fund itself. And there's another provision in there on the NFL having the right to review and having the investors subject to the reps and warranties as well. So these are examples of how detailed the Scoop Committee was as it went through this to be protective of the league. So sovereign wealth funds can come in. They can come in through the funds up to 7.5% of each of the fund.
This is an easy segue, but how does the Scoop Committee decide who to approve? I mean, there are some of the biggest names in PE on the list. From what I understand, there were other big names in PE that were interested that did not end up on the initial pre-approval list. Is it like going to a municipality and asking for better returns? Is it using leverage? What are they looking for when they decide, okay, Ares is on the list and this other big private equity fund, this one is not?
There were a number of criteria. One of the first criteria was whether they would understand that the NFL is different than the other sports leagues, and therefore the terms were going to be different. And they had been in discussions. PJT has played a big role in interacting with all of the PE firms that have been interested. Let's call them all the institutional investors, because there are a lot of other ideas that came over the transom. So the first thing that Scoop did is two scoops. Scott Soshnick. It just dawned on me the connection there.
Every time you say it, I think of it, but it just hits you. It's really nice when self-discovery happens, and I don't have to. I rarely get it with my co-host. It's like it just goes right past. I'm like, here's a moment, never happens. So Mark got there.
Yeah. So there were lots of discussions and lots of proposals and different ideas that came in. And the NFL whittled those ideas through. Scoop with Joe Sinclair, Jay Bauman, and PJT, of course, with Roger always involved, whittled those down to the things they wanted to see in a deal. And
could you share an idea that didn't make the final cut?
A bank, a single bank, one party to be to aggregate the money, and there'd be one source. So that's one idea that came in. And by the way, that came in from multiple institutional firms. That wasn't just one. They came in from multiple institutional firms. So like a single
clearinghouse, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's an example of something the NFL said, no, that's not right for us. And so then it then went to once the broad parameters were accepted by, and it was more than the number of firms that were here that got in here. The next question was, who's got at least $1 billion, but that increased to $2 billion very quickly, available immediately. And that was a major, because other firms needed to raise the money for it. The NFL wanted that money available immediately. And then it was, the commitment. This was, and what I'm about to say was particularly important to Roger. He wanted the commitment at the highest levels of each of these firms. He wanted the top people to come to the meeting and say to the league and to the owners on the committees, my entire firm, we are behind this totally and completely. Not one division, the entire firm. That was particularly important to Roger.
That makes me think of, we had Jessica Berman on this show about a year ago when Sixth Street bought the expansion club in San Francisco. And one of the things she was saying, it was important that Alan Waxman, who runs Sixth Street, be on the board and be the governor of the team for that exact reason, that wanted to know that the highest level of the company was invested in this and was involved and had the mandate and the ability to make decisions. So that's interesting.
Mark, we can close on this. I have another great idea, and although I wince a little bit, but I have a great idea. It just occurred. This just occurred to me as you were going through the litany of things that the NFL was sort of attracted by or mandating. That my wife should absolutely be a candidate to replace Roger Goodell as commissioner of the NFL. She would not be satisfied with 94 out of 100. She'd be like, how do I get the other say? Whatever it may be, she's not satisfied at that. She certainly $1 billion. No.
I just heard right there, my wife is not satisfied. That's all I heard there.
We're going to clip that one and put that one on social.
That's fine. We can have her as a guest on the show. I'll get you her saying it.
About the headlines.
You saying, well, here's $1 billion. And no, that's not enough. We need to make it 2. That's certainly in line with her thinking. And she wants the capital available immediately. Certainly, again, aligned with her thinking. So, I mean, based on this criteria, I think my wife has a really good platform to at least put her hat in the ring as next commissioner of the NFL. Just saying.
We'll make sure her name is there, and you'll be her first sponsor for that position.
Absolutely.
No problem.
For sure. I love it. All right, Mark, we'll get you out of here on this. When are we going to see the first deal?
I believe we'll see the first deal this calendar year. We might see two this calendar year. There's a lot of work that still has to be done, guys. I mean, yesterday was vitally important, but they haven't even documented the agreements with the private equity firms yet. That's why this was provisional approval, subject to the documentation all being acceptable. So that's got to get done. But the firms can now start talking in earnest and out of the shadows, because some of the firms have been talking to teams already, and they can now come out of the shadows.
I'm
and work with
shocked.
them. Yeah, I know, we're all shocked. So I would expect 2 plus, could be 3, could be 1, but I would expect 2 to 3 that will be up for vote probably at the December owners meeting.
Okay, this is where the lawyers get bleary-eyed trying to put this stuff on paper. I love talking to the lawyers. One of the best lines I ever read, or not only read, maybe said it, but again, I won't say exactly who it was, but he worked for David Stern, and that he had just been through the ringer trying to get a deal done, and he said on my flight home, he said I had to pay extra for the bags under my eyes. How great a line is that? How great a line is that?
That is a great line. And
I never forgot it, and it really paints the picture of what it's like to be a league lawyer.
Very, very true. I love it.
The old people, the old people like me who listen to the show, who were around the NBA those days, say, I know who he's talking about. I know those bags. Those ain't carry-ons, my friend. Those are check bags. Mark Gannis,
Awesome.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. When we need the information, we know we can ring you up, and there you are. So thank you so much, my man.
Thank you,
My
Mark.
pleasure,
He is
guys.
the co-founder, managing director of Sports Corp and an NFL insider, unlike any other. For Scott Soshnick, you can find him on Twitter at Soshnick.
Mark, this is where we talk and see if we can throw him off his game on the closing.
On Twitter
Look at
at
him.
got it.
Novy_Williams.
What do we talk about now?
The show is
Anything we
produced
want.
by
I
Aaron
how's that
Greenwald.
Stonewall
Thank you
doing? How'd he
very
do in the
much
tournament?
to Aaron.
It starts
Matt
this week. I'm
Palacio,
leaving
who runs
tomorrow night for
Sportico's
Boston.
social
He's
media
at 5
accounts, would like you to
p.m.
know that you
Eastern
can follow
time
the
Friday.
show
He
at
it's
Sportico,
face off.
Awesome.
which
Yeah.
is
Awesome.
the
You make
hub
sure you let me know
of
how
the
we did.
I will
Sportico
let you know.
Media
I hope it's
Network.
good.
Absolutely. Evan got through it, baby.
We just
Got
let him
through
talk.
it.
We don't even
Nailed
listen
it.
to him.
10 out of
Whatever.
10, baby.
I wouldn't even know. I don't know what the hell you said.
Better closed than the open.
Much better
Yeah,
close
yeah,
than the open.
under more duress as well.
All right, my